In the conversation today in Subhash Park, in the Hortus festival organized by the Manorama group, we have the former Chief Justice of India, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, and who also happens to be my classmate in law college. We were together in the bench, but as a former judge and a former Chief Justice of the Kerala High Court, Dhan, I welcome you to Kochi.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone who is present here to join us in the conversation. As Justice Hrishikesh Roy said, Rishi as I called him, we were colleagues together in the Campus Law Center from 1979 to 1982 studying law. Now, the point is that, we know a few secrets. So I presume that, those secrets will be kept to ourselves of the time when we are younger. And we'll talk of many more reportable things that we can talk of now.
Okay, since we started with Campus Law Center, where we studied our law, you see, your father was the Chief Justice of the country. Yes. Okay. Your father was the Chief Justice of the country. And we always thought that perhaps soon after finishing college, you will go into the profession, then eventually you will become a judge. Was there the thought that was in your mind when you were a student of law?
Rishi, actually, I sauntered into the law college a little bit by accident more than by design, because I topped Delhi University from St. Stephen's College in economics and mathematics, and I always wanted to do my post-graduation in economics, and possibly my life would have veered around to a different path. When I joined law, I decided to give law a chance, or me a chance in studying law. And once you join law, there's no going away from it, because law is so deeply connected with society and societal issues. I had another problem on hand, because I passed my law and my father had 3 more years to retire. And he said that you will not enter any court of law so long as I am the Chief Justice of India, because as every court in the country is in that sense below mine. So he said, you do what you want, but don't enter a court. And that's how I decided to apply for a post-graduation. I got a scholarship because there was no family resources to do a post-graduation overseas. And then, of course, came into the law and became part of the legal profession.
Well, that's interesting, because I thought that for the audience here, Dhananjay, in our final paper, between the 4th paper and the final paper in the 6th semester, we heard that he's getting married. And in fact, he got married. And then we thought that he'll be here for practice, etc., and we'll be meeting all of us when we started in Delhi. But suddenly we found that he's disappeared. He'd gone on to Harvard. But getting married, was it a conscious decision? But because it's a little early,
I think, yeah. I mean, honestly, looking back now, it was very, very early to get married. But there are things which happen in life, and they happen in life for whatever reason, Again, by accident or by design.
But I remember Rashmi, and you have 2 lovely sons, Avinav and Chintan, who are doing so well in the profession. Would you like to speak a little bit about their growing up years, and were they very sure that they will go into law?
Actually, I left it to my children just as my father left it to me on what I should do and what path I should follow. Even when I was called upon to become a judge, I said yes, and then my judgeship was not coming for 3 years, because then President of India thought I was too young. And my father said that, well, why are you actually getting into this? Because judgeship is a very hard grind. He was not as sure as I was that I wanted to become a judge. Speaking of my sons, I've entirely left it to them, honestly, because my younger son is a barrister in London. So he's leading his own life. My older son is an author and a lawyer. He's written 7 books and is writing an 8th book now on the life of Lokmanya Tilak in the colonial times. So I believe that each of us has to grow based on your own experiences, stumble along the way, gather your own life's experiences, as I did. And in that sense, life never follows a trajectory. There's no linear trajectory in life. Where you are at a given point of time is a product of so many interesting coincidences which take place. You're mentored by people you expect least to mentor you. And I do believe that, it's also time for us throughout our lives to pass on that mentorship which we got from others when we were young lawyers.
You asked me that we will not reveal any of the secrets of the college days. But one thing I would like to share with the audience here. When you were a student in Delhi University, you used to host radio programs, Date with You, Forces Request, and some of us thought that maybe you have a future as a radio jockey and, in the field of the world of entertainment. Did something like that, even as a passion, not necessarily as a profession, strike you?
I can assure you that being a radio jockey was a source of immense power in those days. Because
But you must tell us why it's immensely
because
powerful.
you got all these requests, and the number of requests you got for playing songs as a DJ were much more than you could actually accommodate on any given show. And of course, your college friends wanted you to put in that little request for someone they were keen on impressing with a little song here or there. But honestly, being in those days, you didn't have private FM TV channel, radio channels. You had only the All India Radio. So we had programs like The Date with You on Friday nights, Sunday Requests on Sunday night, Play It Cool at 8:30 in the morning every day, In the Groove at 8 o'clock in the night. But the beauty of it all was that I got deeply entrenched in Western music as well. I grew up in a family which was very steeped in Indian classical music. My mother was a disciple of one of the foremost singers of the Jaipur Gharana, Kishori Amonkar. And, doing the stint for almost 6 years in All India Radio, waking up early morning, in those cold Delhi winters, going for the first shift at 6 o'clock in the morning, I think I gathered a lot of knowledge of Western music, whether it was Western pop, Western classical, and that's continued to live with me today. And I think, that gave us a diversity of tastes, because so many of the people we came into contact with in the studios of All India Radio, some were doing Urdu, somebody was doing Sanskrit, somebody was doing Hindi, somebody was doing English. I could actually imitate all the newsreaders of those times for the beautiful lilt in their voices. But that gave you a sense of the diversity of India, the diversity of music, the diversity of tradition, the diversity of cultures. And another very critical thing was that in those days, Delhi University, where both Rishi and I did our years of undergraduate and then legal education, Delhi University was the hub, because all these national law schools which then came up all over the country, now you have one in Kochi, you have Bangalore and Kolkata, and almost every state now has a national law school. In those days, everybody from across the country came to Delhi, because Delhi University was the most important part for the point of education. So as a result of that, our friends were extraordinarily diverse. They belonged to different parts of the country. They were not just confined to the north. I was myself from Maharashtra, who had gone from Maharashtra to Delhi. So we understood in that sense the depth, the complexity and the diversity of India, and which I believe for both of us has really stood us in great stead when we dealt with the problems of the nation as judges. I hope you also think of it the same way.
I think you're very right in saying, for those of you, we are in one law college, one law class. 4 of us from that law class, we came on to the Supreme Court. But we did not come directly from law college to the Supreme Court. Justice Chandrachud, he went to Mumbai. He practiced in Delhi, went to Mumbai. And then via Allahabad he came. Similarly, Justice Sanjay Kaul, he started his practice in Delhi and he went to Punjab and Haryana High Court. Then he went to Madras High Court and then he came to Supreme Court. Justice Ravindra Bhatt, the third amongst our classmates, he was in Delhi. He went to Rajasthan as a Chief Justice and then he came back to Supreme Court. And I, starting in Delhi, went back to my parents' state, Assam, and then I came to Kerala and Chief Justice here, and then I went to the Supreme Court. So that is how what you said about the diverse India, when you come to the Supreme Court, you must have a perception of how diverse the Indian situation is, the Indian populace is, and Indian culture is. Now, taking a cue from there, you mentioned in one of your addresses in the Kala Ghoda festival in Mumbai, where you said that art has shaped your life. Would you like to elaborate on that particular statement of art shaping your life? Because we are in the art and
As I said, my mother was a classical musician. So my first interface and engagement with art was as a young child. And I can tell you, it's not a secret. Every time that my mother sang, or her guru, Gana Saraswati Kishori Amunkar, came to our house, or Shobha Gurtu, who sang brilliant tumris, she started singing in our home. I would just start weeping. I still remember as a child, I would cry when classical music was played, and my mother wondered what was wrong with me. And I now look back upon those years with a great deal of reflection, because there's something about art in whatever form, whether it's music, it's Western classical or Indian classical, or popular music, or ghazals, which I love, which is truly moving. And as a young child, I grew up in a family where my father's take-home salary was about 1,700 rupees a month, which was decent enough in those days, but there was no free money going around. So there was no question of going on expensive trips, wearing expensive clothes. So just to share a little anecdote, our shorts would be somewhere between the knee and the ankle. They're very fashionable now. In those days, my mother still, bought those shorts for us, got them stitched, because as we grew up, they'd lost longer for us. So, going back to your question, there was no question of, television. There was no television when I was growing up. And what happened to us was this: books became our greatest friends. And the kind of books which we read in school and beyond really have influenced my life. Whether it's, a book like, To Kill a Mockingbird,
okay,
where, you have that great depiction of Atticus Finch,
the lawyer.
the lawyer who defends a black man, or for the instance, The Trial,
Yeah.
again, a brilliant book. Cry the Beloved Country by Alan Paton. I must have read it so many times that I almost had portions of the book by heart. Cry the Beloved Country by Alan Paton spoke about, apartheid in Africa. Or to tell you about a Hindi book, Gaban by Munshi Premchand, which I read in school. It told you about, how the police can doctor the evidence in a case to completely involve a fairly innocent person. What he had done was very small, but they implicated him in a much larger crime. So, reading these books, for instance, the book on apartheid in South Africa, just gave you the impact of what happens when the power of the state, uses everything in its control to suppress a segment of the population. In that case, the people who are the domestic, the natives of Africa, the Africans. You had, a foreign race which came there and ruled them, isolated them. So that gave you a sense of, the injustice. And I think the beauty of art, in whatever form, whether it's a poem, whether it's a painting, whether it's music, whether it's a song, is that it has the ability to shake you up. Art, you don't read a poem because the poem is cute. You read a poem because the poem moves you. It shakes you up. So the purpose of art is to shake us up as individuals. And I think that's what I've really learned over the
I
years.
think you made some very significant points about how your experiences in life shapes you. But I would like to take a quote from your book, How Constitution Matters. Here you have quoted Oliver Wendell Holmes. And he said, the life of the law has not been logic, it has been experience. So perhaps what you have said in your present discourse, how those experiences have helped you as a lawyer or as a judge. Would you like to share with the audience here?
Yeah, when I began practicing law, I was a young lawyer in Maharashtra. Now, Maharashtra today is a developed state. But when I was growing up, there were parts of Maharashtra which were extraordinarily rural, uh, yet to see the fruits of development. You had parts of Maharashtra such as Gadchiroli, which were deeply affected by the Naxalite movement. So, as a judge, as both as a lawyer and later as a judge, you came to face with this extreme two ends in an Indian society. Development, the commercial capital in Mumbai, and on the other hand, for someone whose pension of say 500 rupees a month made a difference between survival and absolute poverty. So you realize that every individual story of human suffering and human injustice is something for which people look up to the courts. And no case in that sense, therefore, was too big, but no case, importantly, was too small. Because you realize that the impact of law isn't completely changing the lives of individual citizens. And, the stories, law is not just a discipline based on logic. For the outsider, if you go to a court, you find that there is so much of a logical argument or sometimes less than logical, the screaming and shouting which goes on in a court. But I think the true merit of law is that its ability to address individual stories of justice and injustice, whether it's a husband and wife in conflict, whether it's two neighbors in conflict, or whether it's a criminal in conflict with the law. Why has that person turned a criminal? As a lawyer, as a judge, you tend to understand that, look, even though somebody is a criminal or has been convicted, you have to understand the social milieu which led that person to crime. Was that person abused as a child? Was that person belonging to a community which was discriminated against? So, a lot of what happens in society and social life affects the way how people behave. And law and justice is really about dealing with human stories as they unfold before you.
Justice Chandrachud, I'm addressing formally as a Justice Chandrachud for one reason. You have authored maximum constitution bench decisions and some very important path-making decisions. But I remember you were telling somebody about certain cases that may not have such relevance so far as the legal implications are concerned, but that touched you and it made you feel that you have made a difference by being a judge. For instance, I know it of course, but if you will share it, there was a litigation, property dispute between two brothers in Mumbai High Court. And then somebody was perhaps singing a song sitting in your court. I don't know, that incident, would you like to, do you remember that?
Yeah, there was this dispute between two brothers. They ran a transport company and they were fighting for nearly a decade. When they came to court, I said, look, this dispute is going to ruin you both. Because litigation can only ruin people by the length of time that it takes to resolve a case. So during the course of the day, I heard the case off and on and I got them to settle the case. Towards the end of the day, when I was sitting in my court, I heard someone singing. And, singing in a court is not exactly something which you accept normally. Just as a telephone going off in the court, a mobile phone is not looked upon very, very hospitably if it's frowned upon. So I asked the court master, I said, who is singing? So he also was pretty nonplussed and found that there was an old woman who was sitting in the last row of the court who was singing. And then these two brothers who were in conflict, they get up and come to me and then say that, Judge, we're really sorry that, this is in breach of the discipline of the court. But our mother is singing, and she's singing, it was a Sikh family, and she's singing a Shabad to bless you for having brought peace to the family. Now, I just feel that, what greater fulfillment can you have than an 80-year-old woman being so happy that, the law's delays notwithstanding, a dispute has been resolved where peace has been brought to the family. So I think the purpose of law and the work which we do now, looking back, we've been both judges for over 2 decades, is to bring peace to our societies, to bring peace to our communities, to try and bring happiness to those who come before you. It doesn't always happen that way. All cases don't have happy endings, but you try your best, in the circumstances to bring happy endings to people's lives.
Let me touch upon another aspect of your professional life. You, of course, initially was in Delhi, then you went back to Mumbai. And Mumbai, as you know, is a litigation. It's all commercial litigation mostly. Now, from there, perhaps ideally you should have come when you had to come as a Chief Justice. You can't be Chief Justice in your own parent High Court. Perhaps to Delhi, but you were taken as Chief Justice to Allahabad High Court. Now, the kind of cases that are dealt in Allahabad High Court, the kind of milieux that prevail in a state like UP, the largest state in the country, were you apprehensive going to Allahabad High Court as Chief Justice, and what is the nature of experience that you carry from Allahabad as the Chief Justice?
Well, honestly, I was very apprehensive about going to the largest state in India. Mumbai is the commercial capital, as we say. Commercial cases, high value income tax cases, cases on corporate law, on securities law.
Fat cat clients.
Fat cat clients. So, of course, I did a variety of work even in Mumbai. Even there, you did have some work coming in from, a lot of work coming in from the hinterland, the agricultural part of the state. But when I went to Allahabad, I found that the state was predominantly agricultural. So there was litigation of the nature that I had never really looked at in Mumbai at all. Say, for instance, the laws relating to the abolition of zamindari or land reform law, which we had in Maharashtra, but not to that extent. It was a state which was much more caste-bound than Mumbai. The state is very, very predominantly, at least at that time, governed by caste. So these were issues which were completely alien to my mind, because in Mumbai we had no caste issues at all as a lawyer or as a judge. But going there, I think, was a huge learning experience. I don't think the lawyers had seen a character like me in their court earlier. I had come there, with an idea to modernize the court, to digitize files. There were 11 lakh cases pending before the Allahabad High Court when I went there. The first thing that I did was, I said, we have to digitize these files. These files were lying all over the place, under the staircases and the corridors, some in the toilets because there was a want of space. So we decided to bring modern technology to the High Court, and we digitized all the files. But I found that even in a state like Uttar Pradesh at that time, if you are objective, if you don't have agendas of your own, people accept you. They may not agree with everything that you do, but if they believe that you are trying to do something which is objectively good for the system, they give you a chance. And that was a huge learning curve for me. And UP itself is not one monolithic sort of a state. The capital is in Lucknow, but the High Court was in Allahabad. A lot of our places where the center of the High Court is not necessarily where the capital is. And this is again, Kerala is another example. UP is another example. So, UP in that sense had two different cultures. Lucknow, which had a very distinct culture based on what they call it, the tehzeeb, the Ganga Yamuna tehzeeb. And Allahabad, which is a little more rural, a little more, the quieter part, but of course with a very, very vibrant bar. So again, going to UP was a reminder that even within a state, there's such diversity of cultures. Lucknow, there's a great deal of Urdu shairi, and I therefore, picked up a lot of interest in Urdu shairi in Lucknow. A lot of art and, music and plays of a very different sort than from Allahabad. So I think, coming in from outside the state, as we both did, he came to Kerala, and a person from Guwahati coming into Kerala, me from Maharashtra going into Uttar Pradesh, was a great learning curve for both of us as well.
But in Kerala, as a Chief Justice, I had much lesser number of judges to deal with. Now, Allahabad, as we all know,
I had
it has got
110 judges. 110 judges.
Now, how do you, after all, your colleagues would expect you to, call them by name or, remember them. How do you manage?
It's actually difficult to remember 110 names right up front. I had actually an album of photographs.
It was a strategy.
And it was a strategic album. And every morning over a cup of tea, I would try and memorize the names of the colleagues with the photographs. But over a period of time, you meet each other over coffee. You meet each other over maybe a lunch. And I would ask them some personal questions on a Monday. What did you do on Saturday and Sunday? So a colleague would tell me that I went on my motorcycle driving about 120 kilometers. So I would then figure out, well, this is the person who actually drives 120 kilometers on the weekend, or someone who is a trekker. So you would say, well, this is a trekker. Another very interesting thing in Allahabad is that you have multiple colleagues with the same name. So, there was a time when President Pranab Mukherjee was the President of India. And I got a message at 10 o'clock in the night. The terms of several colleagues were going to come to an end as additional judges of the High Court. And I got a query from Rashtrapati Bhavan saying that how is it that this particular judge, for instance, is called Ajay Kumar Srivastav 7, Roman 7. And the President of India wanted to know, well, what has happened to the first 6, Roman 1 to 6? And I had no clue. So we got down to the archives. And then realized that, 1 had retired, 2 had retired, 4 is still a judge. So you have multiple colleagues with the same name who are then given a Roman suffix by the system to ensure that the right person eventually gets appointed as a Chief Justice or the right person goes as a judge of the Supreme Court.
That's interesting. I think that strategy, worked brilliantly because you are so much, looked upon so fondly by the judges and people of Allahabad. But Allahabad, I think, has had also very special, intrusion, let us say, into your family. I met your very gracious wife, Kalpana, and I think both of you, take upon yourself and get strengthened by Kalpana from you and you from Kalpana. And then suddenly, one of the days when we were in Supreme Court, I found that you are avoiding, certain kinds of food. And then you said that, Rishi, I have turned vegan. Now, what is the story about turning vegan? I think it has something to do with the 2 daughters who came from you, from Allahabad.
Actually, Allahabad brought 2 beautiful young children into our lives. And I always say that they adopted us. Both our children, Priyanka and Mahi, they come from Uttarakhand. They are special needs children. They have a condition called Nemaline myopathy. Nobody had heard of that condition. In fact, their father, who was working in the Allahabad High Court, told me once that, I have to go back to my village because my children are very seriously sick. And one of our batchmates, Justice K.M. Joseph, was then the Chief Justice of the Uttarakhand High Court. Joseph, as you know, is from Kerala. So I called up Joseph and I said, Joseph, can you please help out and see what's the matter with these children? And he said, I'll get everything done. But later on he called me up and he said, do you know about these children? I said, no, I've never met them. And he says, I think that they are children who suffer from a form of disability. So we brought them to Allahabad and they literally they adopted us and they have become a part of our life, and now, they are daughters. And though they have this condition called Nemaline myopathy, which is really, it affects your muscles, your respiratory tract. It's a genetic disorder. At the same time, they have razor-sharp minds. They are fierce environmental activists. They led us into an ethical lifestyle. And I remember little Mahi saying when we first went to see Doraemon, she said, but, how can you eat? I'm sorry to say this in Kerala, where everybody loves fish. And so was I. I was a pescatarian also. And she said, well, how can you do this? And she led us into leading a vegan lifestyle. And leading a vegan lifestyle is about being ethical. about realizing that, we as human beings are only one element in the universe. And there are other forms of life in the universe for which we must have respect. It's not about just eating plant based food, which we do, but also uh, not wearing anything which would be a cause of cruelty to animals or any form of life in this universe. But interestingly, I've learned so many new things. For instance, I've got these shoes which are made of vegan leather, by the way. So you have alternate leather which is being manufactured by young startups across the country. And so many young people across India, which I have come into contact with, who follow the same lifestyle. Of course, there are health benefits, but the reason why you turn vegan is not because of the health benefits, but because of your quest for an ethical lifestyle. And our children, Priyanka and Mahi, have taught us so much about being ethical in the way we lead our lives. Of course, we respect everyone for their own choices, about their own cultural choices, the kind of life they lead. As a judge, that's one thing which I have learned, the right of everyone to live a life of dignity. But speaking for myself now, being vegan has become a lifestyle choice. And we don't buy any new silk, for instance, because, in the making of one silk sari, almost 40,000 silk cocoons are destroyed by just putting them in hot water. So it's all about, living an ethical and a sustainable lifestyle.
One thing I would like to sort of point out, uh, when you were Chief Justice, during the COVID time, not for a day the court work was affected. And perhaps that gave rise to the virtual participation in court by the lawyers, and how the Indian courts, vis-a-vis the courts elsewhere internationally, have fared. Would you like to share on that?
COVID was in that sense a game changer and a huge challenge for us, because we couldn't have shut down our courts. People come to court, if they have to be granted bail, you have to deal with the case the next day. Somebody who has been subject to preventive detention, you can't tell them, well, COVID is on and we are not going to hear you. So we decided to use our basic computer infrastructure for video conferencing. And after COVID was over, so the entire time of the COVID-19 pandemic, we heard cases virtually. And not a single country in the world heard as many cases as we heard, which went into lakhs of cases. And this was not just in the Supreme Court, it was in the high courts, it was in the district courts across India. Now, after COVID got to an end, I said, why should we dismantle this whole infrastructure which we have created? And one of the great benefits of video conferencing is that the Supreme Court of India has not remained just a Supreme Court of Tilak Marg, Delhi, but it's a Supreme Court truly representative of India. An ordinary litigant who has a case, say, from a remote district in Uttar Pradesh, or we've had lawyers, litigants attend our cases from Guwahati, from Assam, different parts of Assam, from Kerala. I've heard young lawyers from the Kerala High Court address us, virtually. But the one social transformation which has been brought in by video conferencing is the number of women lawyers who are now participating in legal proceedings. Because typically, in our society, women are not just professionals. Men can afford to be just professionals and just conduct their legal practice. Women across society are mothers, they are spouses, they are daughters-in-law, they are daughters, they attend to family needs. So it's just unproductive for a woman to just spend fruitless hours waiting for a case to reach in court.
And commuting.
And that's right, and commuting as well. So what COVID did was, in the video conferencing, that a lot more women are able to participate in court proceedings. Moreover, courts are very crowded. And, I feel that, the jostling, the pushing and the shoving which takes place in court is not particularly meant for women. Most of our courts don't even have toilets which are clean enough for women. For young women, you don't have sanitary napkin dispensers in courtrooms. That was one of the first changes that I made to the Supreme Court infrastructure. How can we, I'm constantly asked, well, why don't more women become judges? You have to start from there. You have to create better, better environments for women to practice law, and which must start with these basic needs. But as a result of video conferencing, I found that a lot more women are now participating in court proceedings. And that will gradually but surely lead the way to social transformation. Because, one woman who is successful as a professional changes the lives of 50 other people, not just within her family, but beyond, in her community, in her neighborhood, people whom she will mentor.
Thank you, Dan. And we'll go to the question answer session, but I have to ask this particular question. In your conversation, you have mentioned Hotel California by Eagle and Imagine by John Lennon to be amongst two of the favorite songs.
Absolutely.
Any story related to these songs, or did you play them when you were in the disc jockey with the All India Radio?
I used to play Imagine. I used to play a lot of John Lennon in those days. And Imagine was by far my most favorite of the John Lennon songs. And of course, Hotel California, but a lot of others as well. Bob Dylan, the Beatles,
ABBA.
ABBA was a very great favorite, and it still is right now. And in the 7-minute drive from my home to the Supreme Court, I would always play either the ABBA or John Lennon, depending upon your mood. There are times when you're very upbeat and you want to then play upbeat music. There are times when you're a little tired, a little down, and then you want to play something soft. But it's part of growing up, and it's part of being in the arts, I think.
But I think these songs, they have remained with us since our youthful days.
They are timeless.
They are timeless, these songs.
And I must share with you that every morning at 6 o'clock, through our years as a judge, especially in the Supreme Court, I would get an amazing WhatsApp message from Justice Hrishikesh Roy, giving me either a cue on the latest play which is being staged in town, or a music video of something that we grew up with, or maybe just a nice joke. But one thing which I loved about him is that his jokes are never gendered. His jokes are always gender equal. I always, frown upon people who send me gendered jokes. And my answer to that was just to block them off my WhatsApp. But with Rishi, he's been truly, truly sensitive. And I think that's what is the hallmark of a great and compassionate human being.
And I think there is commonality on that aspect between you and I. Now, I think we'll take a few questions from the audience. Do you have about 10 minutes? The
Yes.
lady right behind, we'll take it starting from a lady. Can a microphone be given to her?
Ma'am, you can even come up front if you want to,
Yeah, please come here.
so that we can give you the mic much easier.
Doctor working in Bangalore from Kerala. So when you said myelin myopathy, I was a little intrigued.
Nemaline myopathy.
Nemaline myopathy, I was a little intrigued. How do you get the psychological strength, being a degenerative disease, how do you get the psychological strength to look after them?
Ma'am, you're right. I mean, to be very honest, this is very personal, but when the girls came into our lives, even at an important public hospital, I don't want to name and shame the hospital.
This is Priyanka and Mahi. he's
Priyanka
talking
and
about.
Mahi.
Yes, of
I'm
course.
talking about Priyanka and Mahi. I was asked, well, why are you wasting your time? You know what the prognosis for this particular condition is. And then my wife said this, and Kalpana said this. She said, listen, how long we live is certainly not a matter which we control entirely, right? But for every amount of time that we live, we must allow for living in happiness and dignity. And when they came to us, and we first went to the hospital for doing the genetic test, we were told that, well, we give these girls 6 months. And it's been 9 years since then. So I personally believe in life that, you must, that's my own philosophy, that you must live in the present. Why think about, the future? How are we sure about what anyone's lifespan is? And I think the most important part is to live life in the fullest at this particular point of time. And that's the way, our girls, one of them really fell terribly sick when we had away in Shimla about 3 years ago. And she was in the ICU for 44 days, again in a public hospital in PGI Chandigarh. We brought her back in an ambulance. She's now on a tracheostomy tube. But you know, she reads extensively, she plays chess, she plays the piano, she has classes at home. So you realize that, you know, even in times of adversity, there's so much of the positive of life that you can look at. And you know, it's self-reinforcing. We are doubly reinforced by their own sense of humor, that their ability to, you know, confront pain, or their ability to deal with very difficult situations. And then you feel that, well, if they are able to deal with that, who are we? I mean, we better follow the same path. So they have, in fact, in that sense, guided us and mentored us as much.
Truly amazing, sir. We can only bow before you for
Thank you so
looking
much.
after the girls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
Yeah, please come. Gentleman with the cap. Please give a microphone to him.
Honorable Chief Justice David Chandrachud and Justice Hrishikesh Roy, do you allow postponement of hearing of cases indefinitely? I noticed this is what happened in the case of Lavalin case, where our current Chief Minister of the state is involved. Is it not a
Sir, can you just hold the mic a little closer to you so that we
Yes,
can hear
yes.
better, because there's another session
Do you
going on.
allow postponement of hearing of cases indefinitely? I noticed this is what had happened in the case of Lavalin case, where our current Chief Minister of the state is involved. Is it not a drawback on the part of judiciary allowing such indefinite postponement of hearing? Do you allow such postponement in the case of ordinary citizens? This accused may or may not be convicted, but why do you fail to take up the case for hearing indefinitely? Justice delayed for a lengthy period of time will lose people's confidence in judiciary. Thank you.
It's a very valid point that you have made. You know, as they say, justice delayed is justice delayed is justice denied. But you know, we were told also that justice hurried is justice buried. Now, you know, that's the balance which you have to draw. I think all of us as judges have to follow due process of law. You have to give a certain amount of opportunity to parties to be fully heard. Now, the reason for cases being delayed is not attributed only to the judges. For instance, in the trial court, say if a criminal case is going on, you gave the reference of a criminal case. Summons has to be served if the accused has been granted bail. Summons has to be served in any case on the witnesses. The accused can be told you have to appear on every date that you know the case is coming up. If the accused doesn't appear, you have to give summons to the accused. You have to serve the witnesses have to be summoned. Now, who serves the summons? Not the judges. The summons are always served by the law and order enforcement machinery. Now, the law and order enforcement machinery is hugely overburdened. Now, this is the complexity of India. So, you know, part of the reason for the delays that take place in the hearing of the case is not attributable to the judges. The second reason for delays in the hearing of cases is the extremely low judge to population ratio in India. You will find, for instance, in any, say, family court, why talk of just criminal courts? Family courts, there'll be 200 cases listed before the family court. Now, one judge cannot possibly wade through 200 cases in a day. So he has to first take out a roll call of the cases, find out which are the parties which are present here. The third important reason, the budgeting for the Indian judiciary is not controlled by the judges or by the courts. Budgeting is in the hands of governments. And let's face it, governments don't give high priority to the infrastructure of the Indian judiciary. The amount which is spent on the Indian judiciary is woefully inadequate. If we truly have to abide by the rule of law, and the rule of law is critical, your point is absolutely valid. I'm not at all controverting what you are saying. But the point of the matter is, now, if rule of law has to prevail, we must have greater infrastructure, more judges, more well-trained prosecutors. better courtrooms, better facilities, better scheduling of cases, better use of technology. We have used technology now for smart scheduling of cases. So, it's very often the judge takes the flag because the judge is presiding over the court. And last but not the least, the lawyers. Lawyers in some states in India, Kerala is not one of them, but lawyers in some parts of the country, I know as a matter of fact, I've worked there. Any sensitive case, the lawyers would not want to go on. And the reason is that there is no disincentive for bad behavior. We don't impose real-time costs, particularly in civil cases, when people just ask for adjournment after adjournment. Sometimes as judges, we are victims of the system ourselves. And there's so much that a young judge can do. We are now talking of the Supreme Court. What about that young 25, 27-year-old judge who is a sole judge in a district court or a taluk court? Yeah, that person is virtually, he's a sitting duck in the system. And therefore, you must look at the broader perspective of what happens in our trial courts.
Now, the organizer said that perhaps one more question. We'll take two more questions because the previous session, I found that because the discussion was in Malayali, they allowed 5 minutes more time.
Yes.
So there should not be discrimination in a discussion where...
I think Justice Roy does speak Malayali a little bit, Malayalam a little bit.
I won't try.
So if he can venture that, the organizers might just give us a little more time.
I will do it this way. The gentleman here in the front row and the girl there,
Lovely.
lady there in yellow, you please come and sit here so that others don't
And
grab
I'll
your
be
chance.
very brief in my answers so we have more questions.
No, gentleman here first and the lady. No, sorry, I'm talking about the lady. Yes, please come here. Yes, your question first.
So I have a personal, professional question, if I can put it so. So do you have any role model as a judge? That's one. And another one is...
Only one question.
Sir, any
Only one
word
question.
on Justice Krishna here?
I have two role models as judges. One Indian and one outside India. And that is not to say that there were other great judges as well. I mean, I can name a large number of other great judges. Among Indian judges, my great role model was Justice K. Subbarao. And for me, he was a mentor and a role model. I never met him because he had the ability to dissent when everyone was taking a different view, and his dissents became the law of the land in so many cases. Of course, there were great judges apart from him. Justice Vivian Bose, Justice Krishna Iyer, Justice Gajendra Gadkar, whole lot of judges. Outside India, my idol is Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was the judge of the American Supreme Court. Ruth was asked, when do you think there'll be enough women judges in the American Supreme Court? And she said, well, why? When all the 9 are women judges. So I've been a great admirer of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's work.
Yes, the lady there, yes.
So I'm a young lawyer from the High Court of Kerala. I'm just taking this for the young people of the bar. I had made a LinkedIn post 2 days back with regards to the same. That is with regards to the indignity that the young lawyers are facing, wherever it has been. We have been exposed to extreme working conditions, mental stress, for little to no financial remuneration. And whenever we raise this with the seniors, the most of the answer that we get is that no one made such complaint during our time. There existed no toxicity. It is the Gen Zs who is having issue with everything in all things. But there are members of the bar and the bench who respects the juniors, who encourages us to argue. But there exists a system with this country, within this particular profession, wherein the junior lawyers like us, like me, we are exposed to a system where taken for granted, where we are given no financial remuneration, where we have to work from morning 9 to maybe 11:30, 12. And we do it because we are passionate for the profession. We're passionate for the profession. But the passion being taken for granted, how is that system going to be changed in this particular country?
I think, again, a very valid point. The legal profession has also been traditionally feudal, patriarchal, and therefore gendered. I think first and foremost, it's important to understand that And I say that though my father was a judge, but as I said, he insisted that I will not join a court of law until he's a Chief Justice of India. The first thing that we need to do is that we need to encourage young members of the bar because they are the future. And that is something which both judges can do and lawyers can do. As judges, both of us, and I speak for both of us, we always gave that junior who was appearing, who was struggling, a little more time to argue. It's very easy to crush the confidence of a young junior who is appearing. But if you hear that junior just for 5 minutes more, you'll realize that you give that junior the confidence to argue. I have now that I'm doing private work, I'm in the private consultancy space after my retirement. Senior partners of law firms came and say, women in particular, that sir, my first appearance was in your court in Mumbai, way back in 2001. And my senior was not there and you insisted that I must argue. You allowed me to argue. So there's a lot which we as judges can do to mentor young lawyers. Look, all the arrears, and I hope I'm speaking to the judges across the system, all the arrears of lakhs of cases are not going to go down because you crushed the confidence of a junior. Give time because you can shape the future of Indian society, not just the legal profession. Point number 2, we have to look upon young lawyers who come and work for us, not as people just who have come to learn, but also people who are going to teach us a great deal about the law. Both of us had law clerks in the Supreme Court. We had 5 law clerks in the Supreme Court. And I dare say, while I mentored my law clerks, I learned so much from them because they have the view of India today. In the Supreme Court of India, one of the things which we did, 2 things which we did. One, we said recruitment as law clerks will be on an open competitive basis. Exams have been held in 20 different centers across India. So it's not people who will just pick up a phone and say that, well, my child wants to join your chambers and why don't you take my child, or my niece wants to join your chambers. Let it be an equal opportunity employment space. Second, we insisted on paying 80,000 rupees a month to all law clerks in their first year of law practice. Because, there are young women who come and work. Delhi, at the end of the day at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, they're taking Ubers home. They're spending money. They have parents, they have elderly relatives in their states, they have to go back home if there's a family emergency. So I think it's important that we change the structure of the legal profession. Third, lawyers must learn to pay money for an adequate remuneration to young people who come and work with them. And that has to change. Fourth, more and more young women are coming and joining the bar. When I was a young lawyer, it was very par for the course for senior lawyers to say very gendered things to women who were working, put their arm around a young woman lawyer or say something very, very snide. We have to send a clear message that there is going to be zero tolerance to sexual harassment. As a judge in Mumbai and in the Supreme Court, from day one, I sent this message across to not just the male lawyers who worked with me or the males who worked with me, but across to everyone in the office, that this will be a zero tolerance office for any gendered remark or sexual harassment. Because repeatedly I've been told by young women who have come and worked with us that, you hear all kinds of very inappropriate remarks. India has changed. Over 50% of the women over 50% of the recruits to the Indian judiciary at the district court level are now women. And I think, we need to create equal working conditions for women. But that change has to come in. But one point, last point for you. Don't look to others to bring about that change. You as young women lawyers can change a lot within the system by coming together, by the power of collaboration between women, and not just women, because gender is not just a woman's thing, it's a man's thing as well. Get like-minded young and not so young men who are in the profession. Come together and send this message across of the emerging India and the changes in the legal profession which we must bring about.
Thank you, Justice Chandrachud. Thank you, Justice Roy.
Do you think we can have one last, maybe 30-second question? I promise my answer will be just 30 seconds.
Sure, one last question.
Yes, of course. But 30 seconds for the question and 30 seconds for the answer.
Namaste, sir. I have read from the newspaper that no case is unimportant.
Sorry, no cases?
No case is unimportant. Unimportant. So here in our judiciary, there are so many cases. They are partially giving judgment. And I have some case. I know. There's 30 years is over.
Sir, I got your point. Let me answer the question because the organizers are giving me, we have to wrap up. The answer to that is really to use better technology. When you have human discretion, there'll be all kinds of problems. If you have better technology, it will do two things. The listing of cases and the scheduling of cases will not depend upon human discretion. Second, when you have technology, you can open up the court space to wider viewing by the public. And the reason why we introduced live streaming in the Supreme Court proceedings was simply this. Let people know.
Transparency.
Let there be transparency in the functioning of the court. Because the only way we will be able to change the system and the problems which beset the system, and you have referred to those problems, I can't deny that those problems exist, is to bring greater transparency. More sunlight, which is the only answer and greater accountability of all segments.
Now I invite Mariam Amin Matthew, CEO, Manorama Online, to felicitate our guests with a token of our gratitude.